Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by Kanoa Smith, head basketball coach at Water High School in the Valley of California. Welcome to the pod, Coach.
What's going on?
Let's figure it out, shall we? Why don't you take us through your background as a coach? How did you get started in this thing 18 years ago, and what led to the progression of your career climb, shall we say?
So I graduated from Atwater High School in 2007. Um, Knew I wanted to stay involved with basketball in some way, shape, or form. Also knew I wasn't going to make the NBA, so I wasn't going to make a living out of it. I was pretty realistic at that point. So I thought the next best thing was possibly maybe get into coaching. So I figured I liked high school kids and the high school background. Maybe I want to teach. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I heard teachers didn't make a lot at the time. I found out more that was elementary school more so than high school. So I was like, hey, okay, those are the kind of kids I want to teach anyways. We'll figure it out. About 2, 3 months after I graduated from high school, I was doing the Merced College gig for a while, doing the JUCO gig, and I got a call or text, whatever you want to call it, from another buddy of mine that graduated from the same school at the same time. And he was helping out, and our school was really short on coaches. And my coach at the time, John King, he was still coaching the program. They asked him, "Hey, what's Kanoa up to these days? Is he going to school? What's he doing?" And my buddy knew. He's like, "Hey, yeah, I think he wants to be a coach and teach high school, so he's doing that." And he's like, "We need coaches. If he wants to help out, give him a ring, let him know." So I showed up one practice day thinking I was just going to be a scout team guy, and 2 weeks later, I'm sitting on the bench with a polo, acting like I know what I'm doing. And so that's how it started off. I did 10 years as an assistant or lower level head coach. And then I was named the head coach at 27, 28. I don't know how long ago it's been, 2017, 2018, something like that. I think I'm going into my seventh or eighth year running the program. They all mesh together. So 18 years here, bunch of different head coaching changes, but I've been at the same school, been coaching here more than half my life. So that's where I'm at now.
That's commitment. If anybody want to know what that means, right? You leave and graduate and then right back, and you've been there longer than you were there the first time. So I appreciate that, and I'm very curious as you come in as an assistant, fresh out of high school as an 18-year-old, right? And you're growing and you're doing all this stuff. You've got multiple head coaches. You've learned from a bunch of different people, but now you're sliding over 18 inches and you're the head coach. What'd you realize right away you needed to figure out?
Everything. Absolutely everything. I had no clue what the hell I was doing. We weren't very good the first few years. I think the biggest thing for me, more so than anything else, is I wanted to stand out. I wanted to be different. And realizing when you want to do that, it's just like anything else. When you want to create, there's not a lot of people that create. There's a lot of people that steal and take something else and then use that blueprint to make something of their own, and they create in that way. But I thought, hey, I'm just going to do what nobody else is doing. I'm going to give everybody else new looks and all these other things. And by doing that, I learned that I was not nearly as talented creating stuff doing that the first time through. Yeah, I think we won one game in league that first year, but I do pride myself on being a guy that I learn from my mistakes. I don't like making big mistakes multiple times. And that's just in anything. That's what we preach to our guys through here. Yeah, no, biggest thing, identity. Who are we? Who's our team? I didn't even know who we were at the time looking back at it. I think I thought I did, but I didn't. Culture is a big one. That's a big buzzword that everybody throws out there. But what does it mean to different teams and different places? That's different to everybody. So we had to find that. That kind of tied in with identity. And then the biggest thing is what I got from one of my mentors is, what do I want it to look like? What do I want everything to look like? What is practice supposed to look like? What's my day-to-day routine look like? What's my practice plan look like? What do I want my coaches to be doing? How do I want the kids to look in practice? What are we doing from drill to drill? All that stuff. And that's different anywhere you go. I coach multiple sports at the school, so that was the best thing. I think you see how certain coaches do things, and you learn from good examples and you learn from good non-examples. Well, I definitely don't want it to look like that. That was pretty much where I was at for the most part.
Oh, I love that so much there. Let's talk about the culture piece then, right? It's pretty innocuous. It means nothing. So what does that look like? What does that mean for you? How do you create that specifically the way you wanted it to look?
It took time. I think that was the biggest thing, time. I came into this thing thinking, background on our basketball program, for those that aren't aware, we didn't win a league championship for 43 years, and now we won the last four. This is not a basketball school. It's not known for being a basketball school. Um, And things have always, those chips have always been stacked against us. But it was weird because if you ever come through, we have talent at this school and we've had talent for many years. It's just finding a way to work around certain things. The culture, that identity, that was, I think, the big part early on is, okay, how do we get the right people in the right spots and doing all those other things? And I think early on, I thought the culture was going to look a certain way. And now it's early on, I was really consumed with wins and losses, especially being young. I think most young coaches fall into that trap. You think you're going to win, and the newspaper is going to write all these lovely things about you. And then that college coach is going to come, hey, man, come sit on my bench. I need an assistant. And then you're going to be at the D2 level, D1 level. Next thing you're sitting there and you're having steak dinners with Popovich or something like that. I found when I won league, I didn't get nothing. We won 43 years. It was COVID year. Nobody cared. There was no newspaper article. It was just like, hey man, congrats. Nobody stopped me in the grocery store and, hey man, hey, you're the head coach at where so that was a blessing in disguise for me because the minute that happened, we finally won and nothing changed. I was like, hey, I don't got to worry too much about winning at all. And then when I stopped worrying about winning, we started winning more, which was very interesting. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but that kind of worked out for us and where we're currently at. I started focusing on non-basketball relationships. Anytime I am not, I teach at the school, so I got a bunch of these kids in class. Anytime I'm outside the gym, for the most part, unless they start the conversation or it is an urgent matter, I don't talk about basketball. I talk about what they're up to in class. I usually joke around with them a lot, talk to them about their girlfriends, talk to them about their friends in class, talk to them about stuff. Maybe if I know their family outside, talk to them about that, talk to them about their other sports. We got a ton of multi-sport athletes. I make my kids run track. Nobody in my program will only play just basketball. If they were good and they were going to get paid to do it, that'd be a different story. And I think those guys that are special right away, we don't have a lot of those guys, but we definitely have some guys that have played at the next level and continue to. But non-basketball relationships is huge for us. Another big one in our culture that took a little bit of time, but I think it goes back to the outside of stuff that takes place outside of the court. Tim Duncan rule. I coach my best player the hardest. I don't do any of that. He's the superstar, so we got to treat him like the superstar kind of thing. My thing is, if you are the superstar and you're going to play at the next level, I'm a piece of cake to the next coach you're going to get. So if you can't handle me, you can't handle them. So you might as well just call it quits right now. And that's when I have those conversations with them. Let's be honest. Let's just think about it. If you're going to play at the next level, yeah, I'm going to play at the next level. Okay. So your coach should be better than me, right? I hope your coach is better than me. Yeah, that's okay. Then are they going to hold you to a higher? Yeah, they're going to hold me to a higher standard than you are. All right. So then why are you complaining if I'm coaching you hard? And there's that pause, and they're starting. Okay, I get it. And I was like, and if let's say you aren't the best player, how would you like it if you were the worst player, and I was letting you just run around and do whatever you wanted, but I was holding this guy to a higher standard? How would you feel about that? Little conversations like that are huge for these kids. I've noticed a big change when we start doing that. It can be tough, especially if you got a kid who is your best player that has a little bit of an ego. But I think it goes back to, like we said before, that once they know that I care about them and not just what they give to me on the basketball court, everything kind of changes. So that transparency that we have, that honesty, can make it scenario kind of questions where they understand it a little bit more, look outside themselves is big. And the other thing that we do that I think I like about our culture that played a big dividends last year is we actually read books. I read books to these kids. Usually John Gordon's one of my favorite authors. And so just taking a look outside of that, and then, like we said, connecting it to the court, connecting it to their personal life, me being transparent, how it connects to my life in particularly. I think me being vulnerable and them seeing that allows them to be vulnerable and be more coachable. And then that's when we grow. That's when things usually start to change for us.
All right, so following up on that, I make my guys run track. We're about multi-sport athletes. That's my soapbox as you've listened to these. So talk a little bit about how that shift was embraced, how you navigate that in a world where the youth sports industrial complex is pushing a completely different message, and how you utilize that to actually grow them as people and as athletes in regards to why you feel that's so valuable.
So that's, if you're talking about putting on two different hats right there, that's an argument I go back and forth with myself on internally nonstop. I do it because if I don't, I'm going to suck. And I don't want to spend this much time sucking. Plain and simple. My top probably 8, 9 players this year are all playing football right now. I've been rolling out in the spring or in the fall league with a bona fide JV squad for the most part. which isn't bad. Most of those guys that are sophomores that I have right now are basketball first guys. But as far as then getting them to buy in, well, I don't play football, I'm going to do track. It's simple. I tell them, if you're not going to be able to run, you're the coach. Who are you going to play? Well, I'm going to play my best five guys. Exactly. Okay. What happens if I play my best five guys and I want to play fast? Are they going to be able to play 32 minutes at that kind of speed? No, coach. So that means if I got five more guys that are in shape, can I play those guys? Yeah, you can do that. What if those guys aren't in shape? That's a good question, coach. Yeah, I'm only going to play seven then. I'll play eight. The bench is going to get real thin real quick. And if that's the case, then we won't press as much as we will. I'll play half court and then we can slow it down as much as we want. And I'll make sure, but you guys aren't in shape anyway. So what's the deal? We're small. We got anybody in here at center and we don't have anybody over 6'4". And okay, so if you go to the next level, what position? I play guard. We got everybody's guard. Everybody's a guard, and you're slow. You can't be a guard and be slow. So that's not going to work. So they buy into that, like we said, once we have those conversations and we break it down for them. Okay, I get it. Me being in shape is the best chance I got to play and playing meaningful minutes. So after that, it's easy.
How do you see outside of the athleticism piece, but how do you see transfer from those other sports for them as athletes and also as you go out and observe, right? You said you coach multiple sports, right? Where do you pull from that? And how do you help others see the value of doing that who may not be on the same place in their journey that you are?
So I had a coach. I actually started coaching football. I played when I was younger, but tell you the truth, like most people, I didn't like getting hit. They had me out of position. I should have been a DB, and they had me at linebacker. So if I wasn't hitting somebody, I was getting hit and got tired. I want to say like fifth, sixth grade too, almost blew my knee out, and that kind of scared me from missing basketball season. So I just made a judgment call there and called it quits. But yeah, I don't know, I might have been coaching 4 or 5 years, and the football coach at the time, Bob Balado here at Atwater High School, he's helping out in the program. He still coaches, no longer running the program, but he came up to me, he goes, "Hey, you want to coach football?" I was like, "I didn't play football." And I was a big believer at the time, if you've never played the sport, you shouldn't coach it. And he was the first one to tell me, he goes, "Can you coach?" I was like, "Yeah, I can coach." And he was like, "Then you can coach football." He goes, "You don't have to know the X's and O's. Can you reach kids?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Can you learn X's and O's?" I was like, "Probably." He's like, "All right." He goes, "They don't got to know that you never played football. You can make it up for all they know." And I was like, and there's some truth to that. I had plenty of coaches tell me they're the greatest thing ever. And then they picked up a basketball and I was like, "Whoa, you just don't forget how to shoot." We figured out the lies pretty quick there. But anyways, yeah, so that would happen. Football for me, especially coaching DBs and wide receivers, getting open, breaking down, footwork's still the same for the most part, ball handling wise. It's not much.
Crossover move and go.
Yeah, it's just an in and out cross. Same thing. Jet, jet, and you're gone. We had that. Teaching guys how to screen, same thing, setting screen, body angles, right? If I'm blocking on the outside of the receiver, I got to take the right angle and make sure I'm shielding my guy off there. So that was always a big one. The big one that I really like now, which is geared towards me as a coach. I am much more defensive minded than offensive minded. And a lot of that has to do with, like I said, we have a lot of multi sport athletes. So I don't get kids in the gym all the time. I've had to learn to control the controllables with that. If I don't have you 9 months out of the year, like everybody else does, where you're working skill stuff, I know you're going to come in here with a lack of skill. What can I control? You're big, you're fast, you're strong, you can play defense. Can you make a layup? Now, I don't got to worry about crossing dudes up. I got to worry about getting stops and running the floor and getting layups. All right. Find the easiest way to score. That's what I do for a lot of these guys. But my linebackers right now, my DBs, oh man, I'm always out there watching guys that who plays well in coverage. How quick can you flip those hips? Because I'm going to guard you full court. And same thing, anticipation, flip your hips, run with the guy, stay right on the hip. All right. It's all the same thing that you're teaching linebackers and you're teaching DBs for the most part. All right. Stay within the bubble is the same thing as you're playing press coverage or man coverage for the most part. So if you got the dudes, you got the dudes, and don't overcoach them and just let them go.
No doubt. I love that. What would you say is the best thing you do in your program that has the largest ripple effect on what you're trying to create? And by that, what are some tangible takeaways that are specific to what you do that you could offer others?
I think it goes back to the relationships. It sounds cliche, like everybody else says, but to me, what I've learned in my life and just experiences more so than anything else, the most valuable commodity to me is not money, it's time. I always tell the kids, the hardest thing in life to be is consistent to me. All right. You can go to the gym 5 years in a row and you miss a month and your body's going to pay. You could be a great dad for 20 years and make the biggest mistake of your life. All right. And all of a sudden your kids look at you differently. You could be a great husband for 30 years and do the same thing. All right. All it takes is one bad day, essentially, for some of those scenarios. I always tell the kids it's consistency. And for me, I think the one thing that they don't realize is just how much time I had to experience. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to coach, is I wasn't the most athletic dude, but I was definitely smarter and skilled than most kids that had my frame. And I could have probably played a little JUCO ball. Who knows where that would have took me. There was definitely guys that I know that I've coached now that had attributes that I had, that are playing D2 ball or D3 or whatever it may be. They're at least playing ball. They had opportunities. And for us, there just wasn't a lot of opportunities. Going back to the AAU gig thing you were saying, it's very prevalent now, but where I was at, there was only one AAU team in our whole county. Now everybody's got one. There's more gyms, stuff like that. So there's options, but I didn't have that growing up. So I think that's where I spend a lot of my time. Is I tell people all the time that being a winter sports coach is no offense to the other ones, but it's tough, especially if you're doing basketball. We don't get a Thanksgiving break. We don't get a Christmas break. Now we don't even get a President's Week break. We have that in our district that some people have. They're like, we missing out on a lot of different things. But if you want to be competitive, especially where we're at, I don't even have the luxury of sending my kids off to AAU teams. At least the right ones doing the right things that are preaching the things that I want them to preach. There's not a lot of those. I actually take the kids in the spring, those that want to play, and just keep them sharp. We play every 2 weeks and just work on a few things that we need to work on. And then we play in the summer like everybody else does. And then we'll do a little fall league and same thing. It's a year-round gig. My wife and me go back and forth on that. And she was a coach and was a player, so that makes my life a lot easier because she understands. But I think we calculated there's only like 7 weeks that I actually take off in the year. I take the 2 for dead period. I take 2 right after the season's over with. So there's 4, and there's 1 or 2 other ones saturated in there. That's a little down, if you want to call it. Other than that, we're going.
Yeah, I don't miss that. As I joke, and you've heard me say it, I am fully embrace the fact that I am a seasonal coach at this point in my life, and I do everything I can to get my kids to be 3-sport athletes so that they are occupied in those other 2 seasons, and then we do kind of optional, open skill and drill in the summer. And it's outside of that, you can be as good or as bad as you want to be. You just let me know.
Yeah. And I think that's where one of the pros are in our program, because we are located. We're not I don't know what we are. We're not the Valley. We're not 209. Every time I see some of these showcases and they put 209 teams, we're not part of the 209, even though the area code says 209. We ain't part of the Valley because that's Fresno. So that's Clovis North, Clovis West, all those teams. And no offense, I don't even know if my guys could, even my best players could ever hang on some of those squads at times. But that's what I tell people. Hey, you want to, oh, where are you from? I'm from the Valley. Okay, so you guys play in Fresno. Yeah, we got to drive an hour to Fresno. Oh, okay. So you're from like Stockton. Yeah, we got to drive an hour north to go play in Stockton too. Sacramento. Oh, that's an hour and a half, 2 hours. So that's actually the only, if there's a one big benefit is when we go to these places, I'm usually carpooling kids. So I have to spend an extra 3 to 4 hours, where if I lived in Rockland or Sacramento and I'm going to Hardwood Palace, hey, have your parents drop you off. I'm there for an hour. All right, see you later. You're going home. So, like I said,
That's the time you get, that's when you get that van time,
yep,
which I don't think people realize how important that travel time is to building those relationships.
yep,
And it's something that I fight not super hard on my teams because the kids understand the expectation, but on some of the other teams within the school where it's like, hey, I'm picking my kid up after the game. It's, no, you're not. They're riding back with us. And you can get them back at school. And look, this is part of what we do. And because it's that valuable.
yeah, no, I completely agree. Like I tell them in season, it's in season, whatever. But I learn a lot. I think that's, I don't know. I hope other coaches have this. I don't know if it just, my wife says it's just me how I think sometimes, but I'm like really big on like picking up people and just understanding how their body language and stuff like that. I used to have a kid on my team, and his parents would always go to the games. And I remember I questioned him one time. I was like, hey, man, I was like, your dad getting on you every time you go home, huh? He goes, how'd you know? I was like, we have a game an hour and a half away. Your parents are here, and you chose to come back in the van. There wasn't even a discussion. I was like, so I know what happens when you get in that car. I was like, because ain't nobody, if your parents were left you alone, but hey, I'm going back with my parents because I want to eat here. I want to stop here. I want to go to this mall. Because where we're at, there ain't nothing. You want to go bowling? That's what we got out here in Atwater. There's not much to do. So anytime they go out of the area, if I get a kid that wants to hop back in the van, it's one of two reasons. Either he really wants to be with his friends and what's going on there, he misses that, which is great for me, or it's kind of the battle at home. And if I recognize that and let kids know sometimes that, you'd be surprised how much easier my job gets when it comes to asking a kid to take a charge and just sacrifice his body and let this dude just run over him because he knows it's not about me wanting him to do it anymore. It's about the team and that I care about him and I have his best interest at heart. And that's made life so much easier.
Yeah, the third reason that you left out is they know you're going to buy them something to eat, which
Oh
is
yeah, you ain't lying.
your really smart kids are the ones that figure out when it's time to go. It's yo, I'm in Climo's van because they know that whoever's in your van, you're taking care of the bill.
Yep.
Okay, pivot. What have you most recently changed your mind on from a coaching standpoint and from a non-coaching standpoint? And the reality of the question is just about growth mindset, right? So we all grow, we all evolve. I used to be dug in over here because of whatever the belief system was. And now, after studying it, now after evolving, getting more information, I'm over here, and here's why.
Yeah, no, a lot of me like X's and O's wise. I don't really focus too much on X's and O's. If I do, I just steal it. I watch a bunch of film on Clovis North and Clovis West. We run dribble drive. Who else am I going to get that better from? Clovis East has got a really stacked team. All these teams, there's a bunch of teams right now down there who are running this really well. But a lot of them going from that 4 out, 1 in have actually even adopted more of a 5 out stuff. Just finding ways of how they're using their space and being unique with the pieces that they have, and then just taking that stuff from them. But as far as my approach changing for the most part, I talked about the relationship based, and I don't really care about wins and losses too much because I know if we do things the right way, the wins and losses are going to take care of themselves. Another cliche there, but it's the absolute truth. I think my biggest thing in my approach change, my practice plan, everything is competitive based. There's not one time where we're not doing anything competition wise. I thought I used to do it a lot, and then I really focused on doing it more, and I could just tell how much that had changed. I'm more patient with having, I got 4 kids. I got 4 daughters now, 5, 4, 2, and 1. When I started as a kid, I wasn't married and I didn't have kids, and that was 7, 8 years ago. Now I'm married and I got 4 kids.
Talk
Uh,
about two things. I want to know how that impacted your approach to coaching, having children. Number one, you don't need to answer this on the pod, but 4 kids in 5 years, that's a little bit extra, coach.
50 months, put in work.
But the thing I also want to go back to on what you said outside of just how it has been a parent inform that, but also the way in which your ability to plan practice. What are some specifics around that you used to think it was competitive, but now it is because of X? So dig into each of those for me.
So going back to, I think that first one with me being a dad, I've learned to be more patient. Everybody will tell you I'm still not patient, but I'm more patient than what I was 5, 6 years ago. And I even know that I'm patient, but I want to be more patient. I'm somewhere in the middle right there. Also, knowing with kids, same thing. I don't take losses as hard. I used to take those home and dwell on them and stay up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and just think about all the ways we can get better. And then now, if I have a bad day or bad game, I still dwell on it, still think about it, but it goes away a little bit quicker, which is nice. That feeling of, man, feel like the world's about to end. It's a little bit different when your 4 or 3 year old daughter are just really happy to see you come home and, hey, dad's home. It's really hard for me to act like a jerk and then I'm mad. I don't think about myself as much and think more about, hey, I got better things, not necessarily better things, but I got good things still to look forward to, even when I come home from a tough loss. And that's changed my mindset more so because now I'm in a better mood. And so I'm looking at things a little bit differently or getting to it a little bit sooner, a little bit quicker. As far as competition based stuff and practice, I guess if you even want to tie this into new thought processes and stuff like that, like we are saying before, I always valued chemistry. I think chemistry is huge in basketball. I got spoiled, I think, the last 3 or 4 years, and I didn't realize how big chemistry was. I knew we were going to have chemistry issues last year. 2 years ago, we had the best team in school history, went 29-0, beat some section champions. I think we were the last team that was undefeated in the state, actually. Ended up losing our second round playoff game to Whitney High School. They ended up winning the section championship. Um, they're a really good team, coached really well. Coach French over there. And so we ended up losing that one. and we lost. So we had 11 seniors on that group. And so last year was our first year without that group, and we had two kids that have been starting ever since their freshman year. So we lost a bunch of senior leadership. We lost a bunch of, like you said, pillars for the culture and knowing how we do things. We only had one guy last year play on our team that actually played minutes from that 29-0 team. So it was a bona fide, just, hey, put it together. Everybody's going to try things out. And we hit a point where we were losing some games that I felt like we shouldn't have lost. Not that they weren't bad teams, it's just we did uncharacteristic things. And it finally got to the point where, I was like, all right, these are the five older guys that seem to play well together, even though they're not my best players in any mean. And then I got this group of guys who are juniors, who are younger, who have just played together. So we just started in practice. Hey, we're playing this is the rule. This is what we're doing. We're playing whoever wins, you're starting tomorrow. And you had some guys that were like, I can't make a layup, but I'm going to play some defense right now. I'm going to get after it. And surprisingly, what was crazy is that our juniors would always win in practice, but sorry about that. Our juniors would win in practice, but our seniors were always our better players. And so we had a few games every year, and I don't know what coaches thought. I'd always love to hear that from in our league, because they would see me roll out my second group starting. They're like, this guy think he's like just going to run us up or anything like that. And I was like, no, it goes back to, like I was saying, I'm gonna be honest with you. If I say you're playing to win and you're gonna start, you're gonna start. And I would just tell them beforehand, hey, you got 6 points to work with till everybody gets tired. If you go down 6, I'm pulling you all out, and the seniors are going in, right? But if you keep that there and you're up and you can keep it within there in that group, then we'll keep you out there as long as possible until we start seeing guys get tired. That always helped. Any little side drill, even if it's a shooting drill, whoever's got the most points, other teams line it up, we're running. Conditioning is another thing that's changed for me. I'm big on, I find guys that are smarter than me. I've always done that in my coaching career. I shut my damn mouth and I listen to people that have been doing it longer. And I just listen to them and figure out what's worked for them. They've done it. I would hate if a 12-year-old came and told me that I don't know how to coach basketball. I'm 35, but do the age gap there. Somebody's 55 has been coaching it for 30, 40 years. I'm going to shut my damn mouth and I'm going to listen. That's shaved years off of me probably being as successful as we probably have. I would imagine so. But yeah, I think just doing that, keeping it competitive. I don't run them. I always tell that, I was like, I will never design a practice plan where you run. You run because you screwed up. We run in the drills. Everything is meant to be fast anyways. You're going to get your conditioning in the drills. I'm big on compound stuff, doing multiple things at once. I don't like just working one thing at a time. So that's another big one. And they get that. Like I said, we just communicate it. I think as coaches, sometimes we over communicate, at least most of the coaches that I've been around. My assistant coaches hate it that I talk so much sometimes, probably doing it right now, but it's just, you just get used to it.
I love that. So good. All right. So we're going off script now because I'm super entertained and I'm curious how you'll answer some of these bonus questions.
Yeah.
So let's do this one to start with something easy. What's the best tool you have recently, or let's say in the last year, adopted that has made your life better, easier, more efficient, coaching or not, teaching, whatever it happens to be?
Best tool made my life
I'll
easier.
give you an example that you can take away. I'll give you two. Number one, there's a software program called Calendly that syncs up with Google Calendar. It's how you scheduled the podcast interview. No
Gotcha.
more back and forth. When can we meet? How does this sound? How does this sound? It's like book a time. So that's number one. Number two, there's software out there called Otter that will jump into your meetings and it will record them. It will transcribe them. It will give you action items. It will break it down like it is a digital assistant. So there are two that, as the athletic director, have made my life infinitely better.
Gotcha. All right. So I don't know if this is new. The only stuff that I know recently that's made my life instantly better is anything that makes my wife happy. That, and then in turn allows me to coach more without getting yelled at. And sometimes, because practice is supposed to end at 6:30, but I don't be getting home till 7:30 sometimes. So as long as she's got something that for the most part is at least entertaining her, or if the kids aren't acting up, maybe it's even something for the kids so they're not driving their mom crazy. That always helps me out. But a big one for me is DonorsChoose. I don't know if you're familiar with DonorsChoose.
Nah,
Donors
tell us about it.
DonorsChoose saves me about $10,000 to $15,000 for my program a year, especially where we're at. I hate fundraising. I do not like asking people, will you give me money? But you need it. You need to fundraise in order to run most of these programs, especially at a public school where we're at. We use DonorsChoose. Pretty much what DonorsChoose is, they have a list of options that you can buy certain things based on people that are partnered up with them. And you fill out this form and you write about your students and your kids. You do little thank you notes, take a picture or two about what you got, and you send it off to your donors, right? And you can ask people specifically from there. We use our booster club a lot of the time. If we know there's certain things, hey, we're going to raise this on DonorsChoose, right? And then they'll contribute to that. But
I'm
donors,
looking at this. Sorry to interrupt. It's almost like a GoFundMe for educators.
yep, exactly. And so Dick's Sporting Goods, they always do a match. So I put all my stuff together. So for instance, this year, all our gear and team gear and jerseys and everything else we did, I put it all on the website. And once you get 6 points, you get about 3 points per project if you do everything right. So once you do 2 projects, you get 6 points and you can do a custom order. So that's when I get my BSN guy, I go through and I put in all my stuff. It's a little, it can be time consuming putting in each thing individually, but once you get good at it, you fly through it in less than 30 minutes for the most part. But yeah, Dick's does a match. I put everything in there. We're talking over $10,000 worth of stuff that we use throughout the year. And then my booster club only pays for half of that. And then Dick's matches the other half. So everything every year, the last few years, we get new jerseys every year for the most part. And I let the kids design them. And then we have gear even for our lower levels that we give away to the kids as part of if you make the team kind of thing, and trying to protect them through the elements in the winter season. A lot of these kids, some of these kids don't have jackets, they don't have sweaters. So we get them something. And so it's been one of those things where a lot of kids know you're playing on the basketball team, whether you like it or not, because of the stuff you're wearing. And the kids love swag. The kids love the new gear, the drip, as they love to call it these days now. And we do a bunch of stuff through DonorsChoose, but it's not just gear stuff that's made my life easier. Now I'm able to use those extra funds for tournaments, for food, like we talked about earlier. I'm big on the team bonding stuff. So even if it's going out somewhere to eat or having kids over for a barbecue or something like that, basketballs are not cheap, right? So I don't know what happened. Our section switched over to the Evo balls, and all of a sudden they're making a killing off of everybody in our section. That ball went from $60 to $105 real quick. So I don't have an allotted amount of money for basketballs in my school. We use that, ball racks, stuff like that. Padding, we had a new gym, so some of the corners were tough. We bought stuff for padding, exercise equipment. We got 5 shooting machines up in our gym. Where, like I said, I don't got a lot of skill guys. So can you make a layup and can you make an open shot? So if you can't make an open shot, no excuse for the most part. At least we're going to put you on the shooting machine and catch and shoot. From there, you got to actually work your conditioning into it too. But we bought a bunch of those, and the girls' coach has been more successful than I have, J.R. Davis over here. So he's on the same boat. He actually the one introduced me to DonorsChoose. So we've gone halves on shooting machines. We got multiple Vertimaxes and stuff like that. So we're just trying to give kids an opportunity and also save our own butts in the fact that, hey, what's your excuse for not being good? You got 2 gyms, you got 5 shooting machines, you got the Vertimax, you got this. If you don't want to work, you don't want to work. There's no substitution for that. But it's not because you didn't have access to stuff.
Thank you for sharing that. I've never seen that. It's fascinating. It would have been super helpful back in my days of doing the same thing. I'm in a little different boat here in regards to how we navigate things in the private world, but that's a great resource. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I'll give you one more that is bound to be entertaining. What's an insult that you've received that you're most proud of?
An insult that I've received that
That you are most proud of?
that definitely last year. I don't really know if it was an insult. I'm petty. So I think that I'll be the first one to tell you it doesn't take much to I'll make up stories in my head. I feel bad like MJ in The Last Dance. That kind of made it even more. I was like, I'm not that kind of petty, but I'm pretty bad. I'll do some of that stuff. But yeah, so much stuff is taken out of context. Social media is the devil, all right? It's entertaining as hell, but it can be the devil sometimes. And when I see other teams getting love, or I see somebody talking about this or that, or they mention something out there, for whatever reason, and thank God for my wife, I'm like, man, they're talking crap about us. She's like, no, they're not. They're mentioning this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, they probably are. And she's like, it's not always about you. And I'm like, I know, but when it gets basketball season, I don't know why. But you just get into that mode where, hey, we got to prove ourselves. We got to prove ourselves. Maybe it's because we are where we are, and I'm always feeling like that. Maybe it's because, like I said before, I never had the frame that kind of stood out. So I'm petty in that sense. But yeah, we went 29-0 and that last year, and I think everybody was like, all right, don't worry. They're good because this group has been good. They got some special players, but they're all going to graduate, and Atwater basketball is going to be back to Atwater basketball. I don't know how many times I would hear that from certain people. And then we won the league championship again last year. So if there was one good thing about that, and I'm getting to the point now where I don't really care too much about the league. I want to win, but I'm very free right now where I'm at. I love it. Somebody's like, "Would you ever coach college basketball?" I was like, "No." Like, why? And I was like, because I don't want to beg a kid to come play for me. I really don't. I hate having to recruit. I don't even want to do that at a private school. This is my school. I like where I'm at. If they fire me tomorrow, I really don't. It is what it is. I don't care. What am I going to? You're not paying me a lot. So it's not, oh, I got to go home now and spend time with my four daughters. Oh, my life sucks. No, uh, my family would love it. I wouldn't mind it. I'd have a lot more free time. I get to go Christmas break. I get to go to Reno. I get to have some fun times, do some fun things and breaks that I wouldn't mind doing. So I don't mind that in a sense, but that was big to me, showing people like, hey, it's a culture thing. That's where we really, I think more people bought into that. If you're a part of it, you talk about it, culture, but everybody on the sides, yeah, culture's great, but you also got really good players. And I was like, I do not argue that at all. Right. But then it was like, okay, the culture's still good, and some of our players are still good too. The only team that I saw beat us that year that we were good besides Whitney was the dudes in practice. Yeah, but they weren't on the court. So I was like, don't misjudge that. So that was a big one for us. That made me feel good. From a standpoint of we were not the favorites. And that's where I'd rather be. I'd much rather be the hunter. I don't want to be the hunted. So I love that.
As I expected, great story. All right, last question. What is a favorite failure of yours that has allowed you to find growth, success, development that you can point to and say, this was the moment?
That one's easy because that's one I think I got a lot of love on when I had an interview with somebody else a few years ago down in Modesto. But yeah, that second year, first tournament of the year, had a bunch of basketball only guys, as I like to call them, and came out and played Bayer, and we are down 59-7 at halftime. 59-7. And I remember thinking, damn. I was like, do we even come out of the locker room? What do we do right now? Because I felt bad for the parents for the next game because they was going to start that game early, and they were going to. I thought you guys played at 5:30. Why'd you guys start at 5? Oh, the other team, they was down 59-7 at halftime. All those kind of scenarios were going through my head. I felt, and they didn't do anything. They weren't running up the score. They literally would done exactly what I did, and that was Coach Kyle McKim, who I think is probably one of my little guys that my coaching Mount Rushmore, if you would, in my area that I keep in touch with. Keith Hunter's another one that I was at Golden Valley for years. I watch a bunch of film and still stuff from him at Golden Valley. He's no longer there, but I'm still in stuff when he retired from years ago. I still have that film from 5, 6 years ago. I watched that. But Kyle beat us 59-7. And the thing that I really liked about the game, besides if there was one thing, is they looked like us, which was crazy. They had nobody that was super big or tall. They didn't pass the eye test, if you will, for the most part. And they just came out and just whooped us. Just absolutely. And it wasn't even like they were trying to show, you could just tell there was a quiet confidence. They knew what they were supposed to do. They knew what shots they were supposed to take. They knew where they were supposed to get on the court. And it was just like, wow, like if he can do that, I could maybe at least do half of that. And if I could do half of that, I'm going to win a lot of games. And so he actually came up to me after the game and he was apologizing right away. I can't remember the final score. Actually, I take that back. That happened 6 years ago. I still never forget that. 81-19 was the final score, maybe 81-17. But it was running clock the whole second half. And he stopped me after the game. He was like, hey, coach, I'm sorry. And I was like, hey, don't be sorry. I was like, how'd you do it? And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you do? Because obviously I need to do it because it's probably as close as I'm going to get. And so then obviously that opened up a whole different conversation. He sent me stuff from Vance and Clovis West and some of the things that he had stole from Fresno City, all of that lovely stuff, and some of the people that influenced him. And from there, I just took those concepts and then we just added our own things to them. I will run same kind of sets and motions and things like that, but based off of what my guys can do well from year to year, I'll throw in a little wrinkle here or there. But that was by far and away the best thing we've ever done. And I think the next year we played them at the same exact time the following year, and we ended up losing to them by 6. And so some of those guys that were still on the team from the year before were like, what the hell just happened? kind of thing. And then that's when things started really taking off for us. And we just stuck with it ever since.
Great story. Thanks for sharing that. This has been fun, man. I want to talk to you more later, but thanks for carving out the time today and reaching out to my solicitation and jumping on here with me.
No problem, man. I recently found a love. Oh, that if you want to throw that, yeah, podcast. That's my new thing. I didn't know what they were. Somebody was telling me, I was like, so it's talk radio. And they're like, but anybody can do it. I fell in love with those about a year ago. Long trips to Disneyland. Only so many times I can listen to Disney theme songs with my kids before I blow my brains out. I just hopped on a podcast and yeah, I remember Coach Hoyt being on one and I've listened to you guys ever since when I have time. I appreciate it. I'm picking up things. I just try and get one new thing from all the new coaches that come on here and at least try it out. And if it works and if it doesn't, back to the drawing board. So network is your net worth. And so where we're at, I can't reach everybody, but I appreciate people coming on because I'm listening. I'm
Yeah,
trying to steal some stuff.
I appreciate that because this entire thing was set up purposefully to be a digital database of mentorship for that reason exactly. So I'm glad you're getting something out of it.
Yeah, appreciate it.